The scent of expensive roast chicken lingered in the air, a testament to another perfectly executed Sunday dinner. The clinking of forks on ceramic plates, the low hum of David's voice discussing his latest client win, the easy laughter of our two children. It was the soundtrack to what, from the outside, appeared to be a life carved from a magazine spread. Our house, a sprawling two-story with a meticulously kept garden, was a fortress of suburban contentment. I had chosen the paint colors, planted the petunias, arranged the throw pillows just so. I had curated this life, down to the very last detail, and stood at its center, smiling. But the smile was a performance, a practice lift of the corners of my mouth that didn't quite reach my eyes. Inside, beneath the crisp white blouse and the carefully applied makeup, I was a hollow echo, a vast, echoing canyon of quiet desolation. I would sit at the dinner table, nodding along to David's monologue, offering timely interjections about the children's school day, but my mind was adrift, miles away, lost in a fog of anhedonia. The perfect life was a beautiful cage, its gilded bars polished to a blinding shine, reflecting back an image of happiness that felt utterly alien to me. David was a good man, a truly good man, in the way one appreciates a sturdy oak table, reliable, strong, always there. He worked hard, provided generously, never raised his voice, and remembered my birthday with thoughtful, if predictable, gifts. He loved our children fiercely, his boisterous laughter filling the house in a way mine never quite could anymore. But somewhere, years ago, amidst the rush of career progression and the demands of young parenthood, the wires between us had become crossed, or perhaps severed entirely. We coexisted, two planets orbiting the same sun, but our atmospheres never truly touched. Our conversations were transactional, revolving around logistics, school schedules, grocery lists, mortgage payments, the polite inquiries about each other's day that dissolved into silence before any real connection could form. I remember one Tuesday evening, not long before everything began its slow, inevitable unravel. David was immersed in a documentary about ancient civilizations, the blue glow of the television screen painting his face in stark relief. I was on the sofa beside him, a book open on my lap, though my eyes hadn't moved past the same paragraph for 20 minutes. I felt a sudden, inexplicable yearning to be truly seen, to break through the quiet hum of our separate existences. I cleared my throat, a small, tentative sound. "David," I started, "do you ever feel like we're just going through the motions?" He grunted, his gaze fixed on a CGI rendering of a pyramid. What was that, hun?" "This part's interesting. They're explaining the building techniques." He didn't even turn his head. The words shriveled on my tongue. A familiar, cold wave washed over me, a chilling confirmation of my invisibility. I closed my book, the soft thud a barely perceptible punctuation mark in the vast silence that swallowed my unspoken plea. Frustrated, I could feel the tension gather behind my ribs, a dull ache that seemed to become a permanent fixture in my chest. Long pause. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, the streetlights casting long, skeletal shadows across the room. David's even breathing beside me was a rhythmic reminder of his peaceful unawareness and my own profound isolation. Our intimacy had become routine too, scheduled, almost. The lights always off. The same predictable rhythm, a comforting familiarity that had long since shed any vestige of passion. He would murmur, "I love you," afterwards, his voice thick with sleep, and I would echo it, the words feeling like dry leaves in my mouth, brittle and devoid of substance. Sad my body, once a source of confident femininity, now felt like a vessel going through the motions. Thoughtful, I would often fantasize during these moments, not of another man, but of another feeling, a spark, an intensity that had long vanished. Sad, the lack of genuine connection, the absence of curiosity in his touch, had carved out a space within me that was ravenous, a hunger for something visceral, something real, something that made me feel alive, even if it was just for a fleeting moment. I'd try to recall the exhilaration of our early days, the whispered secrets, the hands held under the table, the electric anticipation of his touch, but those memories felt like photographs of strangers, fading with each passing year, their vibrant colors muted by the relentless gray of the present. It was during this period of silent internal erosion that Mark moved in next door. I had seen the moving trucks, the flurry of activity, but hadn't paid much attention beyond a polite wave. Our neighborhood was a tapestry of settled families, so a new, younger, single face was a noticeable, if minor, disruption to the familiar landscape. He was building something in his garage a few weeks later, a custom bookshelf, I think, and I happened to be out watering my petunias. He paused, wiped sweat from his brow, and offered a friendly smile. "Looks like I'm going to need a bigger saw," he chuckled, gesturing to a piece of wood that had clearly won the battle. I returned his smile, a genuine one this time, unbidden. "I think David has a really good one in our garage," I offered, surprised by my own forwardness. "Happy to lend it." That was it. A simple exchange. A neighborly gesture. But as he walked over, his eyes, a startling shade of hazel, met mine with an intensity that felt unfamiliar. He thanked me, and his hand brushed mine as I gave him the garage door opener. Gasps. A small electric jolt, like static electricity on a cold day. My breath hitched, almost imperceptibly. I dismissed it immediately. Exhaustion, overactive imagination, nothing. But then Mark brought the saw back, accompanied by a bottle of wine, a thoughtful gesture. He didn't just drop it off, he stayed. He leaned against the doorframe, hands tucked into his pockets, and actually talked to me. He asked about the neighborhood, about my plants, about my day. Curious. Not with a polite, vacant curiosity, but with a genuine focus, his head tilted slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. He listened, truly listened, to my answers, even the mundane ones. I found myself telling him about the frustrations of a new school policy, about a difficult morning with the kids, things I hadn't bothered to articulate to David, and Mark, instead of offering a quick solution or a dismissive platitude, just nodded, understanding palpable in his gaze, thoughtful. "Yeah," he said, "it's tough. You do a lot, Sarah. You really hold it all together." His words, so simple, so unadorned, landed with the force of a physical blow. Surprised. A sudden warmth bloomed in my chest, unexpected and disarming. It wasn't the content of his words, but the way he delivered them, the quiet reverence, the acknowledgement. It was as if he peeled back a layer of dust to reveal something precious I hadn't known was there. After that, the small interactions became more frequent, almost gravitational. A shared wave as he left for work and I dropped the kids off. A quick chat over the fence about the weather or the local sports team. He'd occasionally text me, initially about practical things. "Did you hear that noise last night?" Or, "What's the best local spot for coffee?" The denial mechanism within me whirred into overdrive. He's just friendly. He's new here. This is innocent. But the truth, the insidious, exhilarating truth, was that each text made my heart leap. The chime of my phone became a harbinger of illicit possibility. I'd feel a rush of adrenaline, a sharp, almost painful awareness in my fingertips as I typed my reply, careful to keep the tone light, friendly, safe. One evening, David was out at a client dinner, and the kids were finally asleep after a particularly chaotic day. I was collapsed on the sofa, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, when a text from Mark popped up. "Rough day? Heard a lot of yelling earlier, sending virtual wine." Laughs. I laughed, a genuine, unforced sound, and typed back instantly, "You have no idea. Sending virtual sanity." Our exchange continued for an hour, easy, flowing, full of wit and shared observations about the absurdities of daily life. He confessed his own struggles with a challenging freelance project, and I found myself offering advice, feeling a surge of confidence and connection. Curious. He asked me about my old art school days, something David hadn't inquired about in years, if ever. Grateful he seemed genuinely fascinated by my discarded passion, lamenting the demands of adult life that often force such things into the shadows. Sad, I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The phone in my hand vibrated with each incoming message, sending tremors up my arm, a delicious tingle that spread through my entire body. It was a clandestine dance, a whisper in the dark, and the very secrecy of it made my pulse race. Guilt, a tiny, insistent prickle would emerge, but it was easily drowned out by the intoxicating rush of being desired, of being interesting to someone again. The line between friendship and something else blurred, growing ever fainter with each shared laugh, each late-night confidant. The fantasy was taking root, green and lush, in the barren landscape of my marriage. The air hung heavy and humid the day it happened, thick with the promise of a coming storm. David was away on one of his semi-regular business trips, leaving the house feeling cavernous, its silence amplifying my own restless thoughts. The children were at a friend's house for a playdate, leaving me with an unexpected stretch of solitude. Mark had texted earlier, a simple coffee, my place, 3 p.m. My stomach had fluttered, a nervous butterfly trapped in my ribcage. Curious, I knew, with a certainty that chilled and thrilled me, what this invitation truly signified. I told myself I was just going for coffee, a friendly chat. Dreist. But my hands trembled as I carefully chose my clothes, as I applied a little extra lipstick, as I checked my reflection multiple times, a strange mix of dread and anticipation swirling inside me. I walked the short distance to his door, my feet feeling both heavy and weightless. Each step was a battle between the insistent thrum of longing and the shrill alarm bells ringing somewhere deep in my conscience. Sad. The image of David, his kind, unsuspecting face, flickered in my mind, quickly chased away by the memory of all those silent dinners, those empty embraces. Surprised, Mark opened the door, a smile lighting his face, and my breath caught. He was wearing a simple t-shirt, his hair slightly disheveled, and the scent of him, fresh laundry, and something musky, uniquely his, enveloped me. "Sarah," he said, his voice a low murmur that seemed to caress my name. "Come in." His living room was tidy, but lived in, unlike the pristine, curated perfection of my own. Bookshelves overflowed with dog-eared paperbacks, a guitar leaned against a faded armchair, and the scent of brewing coffee mingled with something else, a faint sweet spice. He led me to the kitchen, where a French press sat waiting. We talked, at first, about inconsequential things, the rising gas prices, a new restaurant in town. Thoughtful, but the undercurrent was palpable, thick and charged. My hands were clammy as I held my mug, the warmth seeping into my skin. He was leaning against the counter, his gaze fixed on me, and in his eyes I saw not just interest, but a raw, undeniable desire that mirrored my own. The conversation deepened, as it always did with Mark. We spoke of our histories, our quiet disappointments, the dreams we'd let slip through our fingers. I found myself confessing things I hadn't voiced aloud in years, the stifled creativity, the pervasive sense of being overlooked, the profound loneliness that clung to me like a second skin. He listened, his head tilted, his expression gentle, validating. "It's a heavy burden, Sarah," he said, his voice soft, "to carry all of that alone." His words were a balm, a key unlocking a door I'd kept sealed for so long. A tear escaped my eye, tracing a path down my cheek, and without thinking, he reached out, his thumb brushing it away. That touch was an electric current, igniting something deep within me, something long dormant. The world seemed to narrow, shrinking to just him and me, and the space between us. My heart hammered against my rib. Yes, a frantic drumbeat. The air crackled. The storm outside finally broke, a sudden downpour drumming against the windows, a dramatic soundtrack to the internal tempest raging within me. Frustrated, my conscience screamed, a faint, muffled sound against the deafening roar of my yearning. David, my children, my marriage. It all flashed through my mind, a rapid montage of what I stood to lose, but the force of the desire was overwhelming, an ancient, primal pull. Sad, I wanted to feel, desperately, unequivocally desired. I wanted to be touched, truly touched, in a way that had nothing to do with routine or obligation. Mark took another step closer, his eyes asking a question that required no words. I didn't move. I couldn't. My breath was shallow, ragged. He reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine, his grip firm and warm. A shiver ran down my spine, hot and cold all at once. He lifted my hand, bringing my knuckles to his lips, his gaze still locked on mine. And then he leaned in, slowly, deliberately. I could feel the warmth of his breath on my face, smell the subtle scent of him, taste the very air of forbidden longing. My eyes drifted shut. The first touch of his lips was soft, hesitant, a feather-light brush that sent a tremor through my entire body. Then it deepened, a hungry urgency that consumed me. His other hand found my waist, pulling me closer, until there was no space left between us, just the pressing warmth of our bodies, the desperate hunger of our mouths. The kiss was everything I had been starving for. Passion. Ate. Consuming. Raw. It stole my breath, emptied my mind of everything but the sensation of his lips, his tongue, his hands on my skin. It was a release, an explosion,
a plunge into an abyss of sensation. The world spun. My knees felt weak, threatening to buckle. He led me without a word to his sofa, and we sank onto it, still entangled, our mouths still locked. His hands moved from my waist to my back, tracing the curve of my spine, sending shivers through me. My fingers fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, desperate to feel his skin. When his bare chest pressed against mine, it was a shock of heat, a confirmation of something intensely real. Sad, each touch, each whisper, each murmured gasp was a transgression, an irreversible step across a line I had promised myself I would never cross. Thoughtful, shame, hot and bitter, coiled in the pit of my stomach, a dark counterpoint to the exhilarating rush of pleasure. But the hunger was stronger, the need to feel alive, to feel chosen, overwhelming the logical, moral part of my brain. Every nerve ending seemed to alight, singing with a forbidden song. The taste of his skin was salty and intoxicating. The rhythm of our breathing, ragged and desperate, filled the quiet room. Exhaled sharply. In those moments, I was not Sarah, the wife, the mother, the woman adrift in her perfect life. I was pure sensation, pure desire, a woman finally breathtakingly, undeniably desired.
When it was over, a sudden, profound silence descended, broken only by the fading drum of rain and the frantic pounding of my own heart. He lay beside me, his arms still around my waist, his breathing heavy but even. I, on the other hand, was hyper-aware of everything. The faint scent of sex in the air, the dampness of my skin, the terrifying reality of what I had done. My mind, previously an empty vessel, now swarmed with 1,000 accusing voices. The exhilaration evaporated, leaving behind a chilling void. My eyes flew open, wide and staring at the ceiling, seeing only the ghostly image of David's face, etched with betrayal. A cold wave of self-loathing washed over me, a physical sickness that twisted my stomach. I scrambled up, pulling my clothes back on with frantic, clumsy movements, my fingers fumbling with buttons and zippers. I have to go, I choked out, my
voice raw, barely recognizable. Mark sat up, his expression unreadable, a flicker of something that might have been regret, or perhaps just surprise in his eyes. He didn't try to stop me, crying. I fled, running out of his house and across the short stretch of lawn to mine, the rain plastering my hair to my face, mingling with the fresh, hot tears that streamed down my cheeks. Sad. I had broken something beautiful and irreplaceable, and the shattering sound echoed not in the quiet suburban street, but within the depths of my own soul. The next morning, the hangover of guilt was worse than any physical ailment. My head throbbed, my stomach churned, and every nerve ending felt raw and exposed. Sad, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, seeing not the woman I knew, but a stranger with bruised eyes and a pallor that spoke of a sleepless night. Whispers. Never again, I whispered to the reflection, the words tasting like ash. The children woke up, their innocent chatter a painful counterpoint to the storm raging inside me. I made them breakfast, helped them get ready for school, played the part of the devoted mother with an automatic precision that felt disturbingly easy. Thoughtful. The internal switch to performance mode was unsettlingly quick.
But the vow, never again, was a lie, a whisper on the wind. Mark texted me later that day, a simple, non-committal, "You okay?" The sight of his name on my screen sent a jolt through me, a mix of shame, fear, and a terrifying, undeniable thrill. I typed back a non-committal, "Yes," but it was a gateway, a tiny crack in the dam. Within days, the dam burst. The stolen moments became more frequent, more desperate. We met in his house when David was at work, or when I'd fabricated an elaborate excuse to run an errand that took me to the other side of town. The thrill was intoxicating, a potent cocktail of danger and forbidden desire. The clandestine texts escalated to hushed phone calls, our voices low, almost conspiratorial, sharing details of our days, our frustrations, our growing entanglement. Living a double life was a constant performance, a tightrope walk over an abyss. Every morning, I would wake up with a knot of dread in my stomach.
Ready, planning the day's deceptions. David, I'm just running to the library for a new book club pick, or I'm going to take a long walk to clear my head. My lies, at first hesitant and clumsy, became practiced, seamless. I developed an uncanny ability to fabricate plausible narratives, to recall precise details, to maintain an innocent demeanor. Sad, I would often catch myself mid-lie, a fleeting wave of disgust washing over me, the realization that I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone I actively despised. Frustrated. The paranoia was a relentless companion. Every unfamiliar car parked on the street felt like an investigation. Every casual glance from a neighbor sent a jolt of terror through me. When the doorbell rang unexpectedly, my heart would leap into my throat, convinced it was an exposure, the moment of reckoning. One afternoon, after leaving Mark's house, I saw Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor from across the street, meticulously pruning her rose bushes. She waved, her smile wide and innocent, but my stomach clenched. Had she seen me leave? Had she noticed anything? I forced a bright smile, my cheeks aching with the effort, and hurried inside, my breath ragged, angry. Another time, David suggested we invite Mark over for a casual barbecue. My blood ran cold. "Oh, honey, I don't know," I'd stammered, my mind racing for an excuse. "He seems quite busy, and you know how he is about spontaneous plans." David, ever oblivious, shrugged. "All right, another time then." Sighs. The relief was immense, followed by a fresh wave of self-hatred. How could I sit across the table from both of them, pretending to be a dutiful wife while my secret lover was just a few feet away? The thought was nauseating.
My personality began to splinter. With Mark, I was vibrant, alive, articulate, and passionate. The woman I used to be, before the years of quiet resentment had worn me down. With David, I was a ghost, performing my wifely duties with an increasing detachment, a brittle politeness that felt like a shield. I avoided his touch, flinched from his casual embraces, the guilt a hot brand on my skin. Our scheduled intimacy became almost unbearable. I would close my eyes, picturing Mark, hating myself for the deception, but needing something to get me through the motions, to dull the sickening reality of lying to the man sleeping beside me. The emotional toll was immense. Sleep became a luxury, stolen in fragments, punctuated by nightmares of exposure, of David's face contorted in pain and anger. I lost my appetite, food tasting like sawdust, my stomach a constant pit of unease. My hands would tremble occasionally, subtly, betraying the internal tremor that shook my entire being. Sad I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't recognize the gaunt, haunted reflection staring back. My eyes were hollow, my shoulders hunched, carrying an invisible weight. The vibrant woman who had briefly re-emerged with Mark was slowly being consumed by the corrosive acid of my own guilt and deceit. Tearful, I loved my children fiercely, more than anything in the world, and the thought of destroying their sense of security, of fracturing their family, was a constant, excruciating torment. Their innocent faces would flash through my mind during those stolen moments with Mark, a stark, sobering contrast to the selfish passion I was indulging. The affair, paradoxically, was both my escape and my cage. It provided the intense connection and validation I craved, an intoxicating elixir that numbed the pain of my marriage. But it was a temporary fix, a beautiful, destructive illusion built on a foundation of lies. Each stolen kiss, each whispered secret was deepening the chasm within me, making the return to my real life feel increasingly impossible, increasingly fake. I was trapped, caught between two lives, neither of which felt truly mine. The intensity with Mark was unsustainable. It was fueled by secrecy and forbidden fruit, not by a genuine, honest future. I knew deep down that this wasn't love, not in the way true love builds and sustains. It was a desperate grab for life, a frantic effort to feel something, anything, beyond the dull ache of my existence. And it was destroying me. The crash came, not with a bang, but with a quiet death.
Faceting whimper. It was a Saturday morning, bright and clear. The kind of day that felt utterly at odds with the darkness in my soul. I was making pancakes, David was reading the newspaper at the kitchen island, and our youngest, Lily, was drawing at the table. She held up her artwork to me, a colorful crayon drawing of our family. David, myself, her brother, and her, all holding hands, smiling, excited. "Look, Mommy!" she beamed, her eyes sparkling. "It's us, our happy family." Appalled. The picture, so innocent, so pure in its depiction of a whole, unbroken family, struck me with the force of a physical blow. The colors swam before my eyes. The sound of David's soft chuckle from the island, the gentle rustle of his newspaper, Lily's cheerful humming, It all converged into a cacophony of unbearable truth. Happy family. The words echoed in my head, mocking me, searing me. What a cruel, elaborate lie I was living. Frustrated, I looked at Lily's innocent face, so full of trust, and felt a wave of nausea so potent it threatened to buckle my knees. I was poisoning her world, poisoning David's world, all for a fleeting, selfish pursuit of sensation. Crying. The dam broke, completely and irrevocably. A shudder ran through me, starting in my chest and spreading outwards, an earthquake shaking my very core. I dropped the spatula onto the floor with a clatter, the sound jarring in the sudden silence that had fallen. Concerned, David looked up, concerned. "Sarah, are you all right?" Lily's smile wavered. I couldn't speak. A sob tore its way from my throat, raw and ragged, shaking my entire body. I stumbled away from the stove, clutching my chest, the air suddenly too thick to breathe. The kitchen, once a symbol of our domestic bliss, now felt like a stage for my own grotesque hypocrisy. Rushed. I ran. Not to Mark's house, not to my car, but to the sanctuary of my bedroom. I collapsed onto the carpet, my hands pressed against my